So another day, another Andretti story in the Formula 1 news. Well, there doesn't seem to be anything else going on at the minute, so we might as well report on that. But they do seem persistent though. Andretti is really determined to enter Formula 1. And unlike, say, Audi, Andretti wants to be in as the 11th team. They've got the $200 million necessary just to pay the entry fees, but every time they find a way to get in, they find themselves another 300 hurdles they need to jump over just to get into the series. And it's not like Andretti is some sort of new upstart that is looking to get into F1 as a vanity project. It has operations in IndyCar, Extreme E, Formula E, ties to the McLaren team in Formula 1, and is part of the Walkinshaw Andretti United Supergroup that operates what used to be the Holden Racing team down in Australia. This is more than just a name looking to re-enter the sport here. But while Andretti had intentions to enter Formula 1 with Renault engines, the tune has now been changed since they've gone, well, what if we brought Cadillac into the series instead? Which is a good question. How often has there been an American power plant in Formula 1? There is, of course, Ford, but those engines weren't built by Ford, they were built by Cosworth. Ilmor used to be owned by the Americans and is now owned by Mercedes. Both Honda and Chevrolet then worked with Ilmor for the IndyCar engines at some point in history. Honda in 2003 and Chevrolet in 2012. But why Cadillac? Because in Europe, when we think Cadillac, we think of that pointlessly large, at least for us, Escalade. The staple of rap videos that has 997 speakers in the back, TVs in the headrest and spinning rims on all four corners. The sort of thing you would have built on Need for Speed Underground 2. But Cadillac does have a racing division. They have cars in the DPI category in IMSA, at least until it's replaced by LMDH, and has been moderately successful in its time. The other thing is, and this is probably part of the whole, do we really need it, is that Cadillacs can be seen in Europe, but they're not exactly, well, common. GM in general is a dead breed in Europe too, since Opel was sold to the French and so was Vauxhall because GM wasn't going to put money into the right-hand drive market anymore. It's why Holden went pop in Australia as well. Lotus was a GM brand. It's now owned by the same Chinese group that owns Volvo. Saab was a GM brand, but it's now bust. And Chevrolets were sold in Europe, but they were just rebadged Daewoo's that are now GM Korea. Okay, so win on Sunday, sell on Monday is a long gone ethos, but when you're a brand that only operates in North America, you're kind of relying on everybody who is into NASCAR joining you in Formula 1. Well, I mean, the viewing numbers for Formula 1 are catching up to NASCAR in America, slowly, but they're getting there. Maybe then this is the worth that Formula 1 was looking for. An American team with an American power plant, and if they can make it work, at least one American driver, which they're trying to make it Colton Herta. Now that Andretti has said, yeah, we'll bring GM into the sport, the FIA has suddenly become more open to them being part of Formula 1, and the FIA has said they'll open a formal process for expression of interest. But the commercial rights holders still have to approve the new entry. Andretti joining with Renault? Drake says no. Andretti joining with GM that has built some of the most iconic muscle cars in history? Drake says yes. And this is what Andretti said last Thursday. People are saying, what does Andretti bring to the party? Well, we're bringing one of the biggest manufacturers in the world now with General Motors and Cadillac. We feel that this is one box we didn't have checked that we do have checked now. But Cadillac won't be in immediately in 2026 should all of this go ahead. What Andretti is looking to do is enter with a customer engine deal to start with so they can hit the ground running, or at least attempt to hit the ground running, and then GM can bring in something a little bit later on once they've got the engine actually cracked. So what are the actual options for Andretti at this point? The first and the most likely is Renault. Renault and McLaren are so far the only two teams that have been open to Andretti being on the grid. McLaren because Zach Brown and Michael Andretti are friends and business partners elsewhere, and Renault because they have no customer teams currently and want to have at least one on the books. The other, and probably the most unlikely of the two, is Honda or a rebadged Red Bull Powertrains unit, dependent on whether Honda decides to make a fully fledged comeback later on. There were rumours of them using a rebadged Honda, but I don't see how that works out, because currently in IndyCar, Andretti uses Honda engines, but they might want to use rebadged Honda engines prepped by GM, which Honda might not want, because who is the other engine supplier in IndyCar? Chevrolet, and that's a GM brand. So it does seem to be a tiny bit weird that Andretti is wanting to come into Formula 1 with the other brand. They already use Honda in IndyCar, so why not use Honda or Red Bull Powertrains and rebadge them and do whatever, rather than bringing in a whole new brand, which is the other brand from the other series that they run in. Maybe it's because they just really, really, really want to be in Formula 1. But when you think about it, GM is probably the last major manufacturer to enter the series. We've had Mercedes, Ferrari, Maserati, Ford, Alfa Romeo, Subaru, Lamborghini. We're soon to have Audi, BMW, Toyota, Honda, Renault, Peugeot. But not GM. Okay, we've not had Nissan, we've not had Mitsubishi, we've not had... insert another brand here, because somebody's going to go, but you forgot. And yeah, there might have been some GM engines in some of the cars when the Indy 500 was part of the World Championship. Oldsmobile, Pontiac, but Cadillac. But going back to that whole thing about the Escalade, I was memeing it a little bit when I was making all those points about it, but it might actually change European perception of the Cadillac brand, because we see the Escalade and the CTS. This is a company that has history in IMSA, has been successful in IMSA, and they've got an opportunity to come over and make that brand cool if they can pull it off. But you can see why there is some oohing and ahhing about Cadillac and Andretti coming in. Some of the other teams are wondering if they can come in and be competitive right off the bat, but we all know it's just because of the diluting of prize money, which is just typical F1 teams protecting F1 team interests. And we're not just talking about Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari here, it's also teams like Williams and Haas, especially Haas because they're already the American F1 team, sort of, and they need the money more than Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari. There's also a precedent of manufacturers coming in spending massive amounts of money for little if no return whatsoever. How much did Toyota spend for nothing? How much did Honda shell out for that one win in 2006 as a full-up factory entry, Red Bull excluded? How much did Ford waste with Jaguar, and so on? There's a warning there from history. And Andretti's confidence is high, their ambition is high, but we don't want a repeat of the McLaren at Indianapolis in 2019 or whenever it was, where they think, we've got experience, we can afford to not do X, Y, Z for a bit, it'll be fine. The concerns when you look at them in detail are actually valid ones. Andretti seems to be, you don't want us here because of this, this and this, while the others seem to be thinking, do you have any idea of what you're getting into? Which is actually causing a little bit of discord between the F1 guys and the IndyCar guys on the internet. It's only a little bit. It's quiet. For now. But it seems then that Andretti has finally got the FIA's attention. Whether it's got Liberty Media's attention is something else. General Motors in Formula 1. One of the biggest brands in the world, well, one of the biggest manufacturers in the world now in Formula 1. Well, we hope it'll be in Formula 1. Could this be what F1 needs in America to get that foothold in the American market and have a legion of American F1 fans coming in? Leave any and all opinions down in the designated comment zone underneath this video and get a discussion going. It is, after all, why I do this series. And while scrolling down to tell me what you think, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want more, and get that bell on as well so you never miss out on anything I do around here. Massive thanks to the kind and awesome folk at Patreon, and if you want to help contribute to the image licensing and bill paying and all that stuff, then a link to Patreon is in the description box, as well as links to Discord and to my socials. Well, there's super thanks down there too if you just want to top up my coffee cup or buy me a drink. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a cracking day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.